This video will be hard to like, but I have to make it. Do you know which American politician besides Trump that disgusts me most? This poker face weirdo. Every time I see her name in the news, my head is just filled with thousands of what the fucks. So Tulsi Gabbard was a Democratic congresswoman and presidential candidate and DNC vice chair. And somehow she just morphed into Trump's immediate inner circle in a matter of 2 years. Smooth as hell. She hung out personally with Trump during the 2024 campaign and ended up becoming the director of national fucking intelligence. What? Like so many congressional Republicans who sucked Trump's balls 24/7 for a decade, but none of them got a job nearly as shiny. What was going on? How did she manage to rebrand so quickly? And how much aiding and abetting did she have to do to win that kind of trust from a mafia boss? Those on the left who used to cheer for Gabbard in the early 2020s really should learn a lesson. Remember this: being anti-war is not a golden standard that automatically indicates a good guy. Okay, these creeps from the 1940s were also anti-war. Why not peace with Hitler? These are not good guys by any measure. An abstract anti-war philosophy doesn't mean shit. You need to specify anti-which war and for what reason. There are fuckers in this world that deserve nothing but war against them. And Assad was a perfect example. Tulsi Gabbard didn't have any policy platforms when she first entered national politics. So her most well-known trademark idea back then was for the US to withdraw from Syria. Because, war is bad. And she wanted the US to recognize Bashir fucking Assad as the legitimate ruler of Syria. That was her only policy brand. To jog your memory, here is a super brief summary of what happened in Syria. If you don't believe me, you can just Google it up. It's all there. So in 2011, Assad started to massacre civilians indiscriminately during the Arab Spring protests, which triggered a lot of armed rebellions. Some rebels were just resistance groups who just wanted to have a peaceful life. And some groups, including ISIS, wanted to take advantage of the chaos and promote extremism. The US troops went there mainly to fight ISIS, not Assad. But in order to do that, they formed alliances with a bunch of anti-Assad groups who were also fighting ISIS. And of course, as a side effect, it made it slightly harder for Assad to bomb those groups. And Tulsi, for some mysterious reasons, was not happy about it. One day, she secretly met with Assad without notifying anyone in advance. I'm pretty sure it was the only known case where a US congressperson met with an enemy head of state in secret. How was that even legal? I have no idea. And then she spent the next few years arguing that the US should side with Assad instead of the rebel groups. And because of that, some people were like, whoa, she's anti-war. How do you call that anti-war? Assad started the war and killed more people than anyone did in the 21st century so far. So you can't be pro-Assad and anti-war. Those two terms are contradictory. Tulsi Gabbard's anti-war was exactly the same logic as these fuckers. They're not anti-war. On the contrary, they're pro-war, pro-destruction, and most importantly, pro-tyranny. Gabbard's position in the Syrian war was not only morally bankrupt, but also strategically stupid. Assad turned out to be so incompetent that even with Russia's help, he still got kicked out of the country eventually by some poorly equipped rebels with zero air force. All those Russian bombers Putin sent there had leveled several cities and killed hundreds of thousands, but still didn't save that government. That's how incredibly incompetent the Assad regime was. And that regime's biggest American advocate, Tulsi Gabbard, is now the spy chief of the United States. Fucking A. I'm so glad Assad was overthrown before Gabbard took office. If these two lovebirds were able to hook up through intelligence channels, can you imagine how many more Syrians would have ended up in those torture dungeons and mass graves? And how much longer the war would last? Now that Gabbard is doing all that shady shit domestically, stealing election records from Georgia and Puerto Rico, covering up for foreign intelligence assets and stuff, I'm not even slightly surprised. What else do we expect from this Russia's girlfriend? If a politician praises dictators like Putin and Assad, it means they want to rule their country the same way those people do. Of course they're gonna start rigging elections. What did you expect? This is why the first time I heard Trump talk about Putin 10 years ago, even without knowing any of his policy, I knew he would be a nightmare. He wasn't just talking about appeasement. He wasn't just saying, let's deal with Putin carefully. No, he straight up called him a great leader, passionately. How can you expect someone who admires Putin to play the election games fairly? I didn't even need to know any of his policy. That remark alone was an announcement that he was determined to stay in office forever like Putin did. I don't know why it took so long for you guys to realize it. Maybe because people didn't know enough about Putin back then. But by 2024, everyone should have known Putin already. He had clung to power for more than 2 decades and had started a war in which his own side lost almost 1 million troops. How could people still vote for the guy who admired him? Just mind-boggling. So here's the lesson I hope everyone, especially everyone on the left, will learn. It doesn't matter what a person's stated ideology is, as long as they praise dictators, it's disqualifying. They're not your friends. Whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or Noam Chomsky or Jill Stein or Glenn Greenwald, they may not sound as malicious as Trump does, but deep down, they all have the same authoritarian fetish. They sing Putin's praise because they want to make America more like Russia. Fuck these people. Seriously.